y'all this evening? We are so glad you're here. My name is Sally Branson. Can you not hear me? Oh, too quiet. My name is Sally Branson. So glad that y'all are here this evening, and what a wonderful crowd. And the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to thank the library staff, Kim, Karen. They've done an awesome job. Please give them a hand. We initially were concerned about attendance tonight, and we were going to be in the community room, which could hold about 80. The next thing we knew, we had filled that up, so we opened it up by 10 by 10 by 10, and we closed it finally at about 135. So thank y'all for your interest, and thank you for the library for being flexible. Thank you. It's my honor tonight to introduce our current mayor of Friendswood, Mike Foreman. He is a former astronaut, so isn't it very appropriate that we are really pulling out all the stops this month, and we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. So please help me welcome our mayor, Mike Foreman.
Well, I'll try to tell you a quick story. So last October, let me start off by saying this. We have 15 astronauts, current astronauts, not old-timer guys like me, current astronauts living in Friendswood. Out of about 58 current active astronauts in NASA, 15 of them live right here in Friendswood. How about that? Pretty cool, yeah. It's a great place. When Lori and I got here in 1998, I think we were the only astronauts in my class to move to Friendswood. Since we came, a lot of astronauts have followed us. That's all I can say. They found Friendswood finally. So last October, we were downtown Houston at a symphony thing, and I saw Kate Rubens, she's an active astronaut, and she saw me and she said, "Mike, I live in Friendswood." I said, "Of course I know you live in Friendswood." She said, "Are we doing anything next year to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11? And I said, "Well, Kate, if you chair the committee, I will definitely help you with that." Kate said, "Yeah, I'll do that." So thanks to people like Sally Branson and Brett Banfield, we got a little group together and we met with Kate. First meeting was great. We talked about some ideas. The only idea that I came up with myself was that we wanted to have a speaker series at the library. So I think, that ended up, it looks like it's a good idea. One of the few I've had. So anyway, no, don't applaud that. So I said, yeah, I'll help you. Kate comes to the first meeting, and we have a good discussion, and we talk about who else we can rope into this committee and get involved. We come to the second meeting, Kate says, well, NASA is sending me to Moscow for a year. So I'm out. So Sally and Brett and I all looked at each other and I said, well, I guess we're it now. So we've inherited this idea, and this Apollo 11 celebration this month is off to a great start with all of you folks here. So thank you for coming out. And again, I want to thank the library as well, because they've really stepped up. When we first started talking about this with Harold Benson, we said, Harold, if we had a speaker series, do you think we would have some people that would want to come that were around 50 years ago and want to talk about this? And look at this, we had 7 people up here already, and we got more speakers to come, and it's a great thing. So thank you all for being here. I'll let these ladies talk and tell you about what really happened back then.
Okay, well, on behalf of the Friendswood Public Library, we are honored to play a role in the celebration of Apollo 11 and to be able to host this panel of people who played an important role in both the success of the Apollo 11, but also in the success of Friendswood. As you will hear, these women helped to lay the foundation of a thriving city you know today. Please join me in welcoming Marilyn, Lunney, and the wives of the Apollo 11 support team.
Nothing ever thought that I'd be back here in front of all you people, but I want to say that this audience, the turnout, is a compliment to the power of women, right? We know it. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am Marilyn Lunney. This is our panel for tonight. Carolyn, Benson, Janet Burtzlaff, Joyce Pavelka. I'm not good with microphones. Millie McElya, Jean Strouhal, Betty Windler, and myself. And we're going to tell you all the deep, dark secrets, maybe. Of course, that's what we can remember, that is, you know. The ladies who have volunteered here on a panel have been involved in many and varied things here in the development of Friendswood. Each will tell you of their coming to Friendswood and how they came to help in its development. Now we, the old timers, not in age of course, just in experience, made our contributions. Each will speak, and at the very end of all the speaking, we'll answer questions. And yes, you know we enjoy talking with you. And so ask away, enjoy refreshments. Thank you for coming. We're going alphabetically. We want to be correct.
I was born and raised in Columbia, South Carolina. How did I get to Friendswood, Texas? I graduated from the University of South Carolina in 1959 with a degree in education. I met Harold through some of the classmates that he had. I had gone to school with some of them and was in church with at least one of them. Harold graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering. He went to work at Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. We married in August, and I moved to Hampton, thinking I was going to stay there for a long time. I worked for the Air Force as a secretary until Edwin arrived. At that time, an announcement was made that a new space center would be built somewhere in the U.S. to send people into space. We hoped it would be in Florida because the Air Force was talking about closing some bases there. They didn't choose Florida, they chose Texas. Our parents were not real happy with this decision. We were at least 1,000 miles away from my parents, almost the same from Harold's. It was kind of lonely to begin with. NASA was giving free flights to Houston for the people who were moving so they could find homes to rent. I had a small baby, so I did not want to fly without my husband. He was already working too hard to come down here to find a place to rent. So we asked close friends, and Judy Guy is right here, she and her husband, if they would rent us a house, because they were coming. And they said sure. So they rented 2 houses, one for themselves, one for us. They gave us the house with the air conditioning. I don't know if they regretted that or not, but they probably did. But we had the small baby, so it was really nice of them to keep our son cool. Immediately, Harold, once we got moved into the rent house, Harold went back to Langley. That was my first taste of him traveling. And the second thing that happened was I got papers saying we had sold our house in Virginia. So I had to find a notary somewhere so I could get my papers notarized. I was brand new here. I didn't know where to go. So I called my church, and that was the key. They found me a notary. We started looking for where they were going to build this NASA center. And we found the area off of NASA Road 1, but it was just a big giant pasture with tons of cows. And as to whether this was ever going to work, we weren't sure, but the government said it would, so we believed them. As we drove around Nassau Road 1, we went by Clear Lake. Clear Lake was piled with debris from Hurricane Carla. We looked at that and decided we are not building a house on this side of the freeway. Shall I say, only to be flooded this year in 17. But that was just one time. We found Friendswood with its trees, creeks, and it was a very small town, about 900 people. We found a lot that we could afford, and so we built us a house. When we moved into the house, the street in front of it was a one-lane dirt road. And here, they don't use rocks very much because there's just not many rocks around here, but they put oyster shells on the road. So you can have traction in this gumbo. One morning, as I came to my back window, I looked outside and found some welcoming visitors out there. I had a herd of cows out there. I won't say, I don't know how big a herd really is. It was probably 4 or 5. I don't remember how I got rid of them. I know I probably did not go outside where the cars were, where the cows were, and that was one of those times when my husband was not here. We had every wild creature that you could think of that would come. Black widow spiders, scorpions, tarantula spiders, and plenty of snakes. Our next door neighbor asked me if Harold was ever at home when I had a snake problem. The scariest snake was the rat snake that was climbing up the brick wall going toward my attic, and he probably was, shall I exaggerate, 10 feet long? Oh, it wasn't 10 feet long, but it looked that way. I called our next door neighbor's son, Mark, over because he loves snakes. So he came and got the snake off the wall. See, he was headed to the attic over my bedroom. I did not want him up there when I was sleeping below him. He came and he got the snake. Now it was time for them to be going to school. They rode their bicycles then, the whole neighborhood. It was like an armada of bicycles that went. So Mark came and got the snake. I think Edwin had already gone by then. He took the snake into his room, put it into his dresser. When the maid came to put his clothes away, she found a snake. She was nice. She didn't like snakes any better than I did. So, unfortunately, he got a spanking for doing something to help me out. And I did not find this out until about 2 or 3 years ago. As the town grew, we had neighbors from all over the U.S. We also, to go shopping, our mall was Gulfgate. To get there, nothing was paved. None of the closed streets were paved. There were streets there, but they were not paved. We went down 528, and I could take my son to kindergarten, leave him there at 9 o'clock, and be back home by 11:30 to pick him up. I didn't do a lot of shopping, so I didn't spend much money. The time was short. We just had one small grocery store here at that time. It was a very special place, though, run by the bakers. And one of the main things that they did. It was a small store. It's not like going to Costco or Target or someplace. You could go in, get your groceries, and get out fairly quickly, which I think my children liked. When it was time to leave, Mr. Baker would get the groceries and go put them in the car. That was such a nice thing to have somebody to do that. And I probably have already said that. My husband traveled a lot. There was a point at which he was working on the surveyor program, and he would go to California for a month. When he came back, I went to Hobby to meet him. Parked the car, took 2 little kids into the airport, and that was where you could go to the gates, not like now. I was carrying Diane, and I was thrilled when I saw my husband. He could now carry her, not me. So I tried to give her to him. She would not go to him. I'm not sure why. Did she forget him? We really don't know. And I was home alone with 2 small children, looking for something to do besides housework. Our children went to Hope Lutheran Church for preschool and kindergarten. The preschool teacher there resigned, so I took her class. And then the kindergarten teacher resigned. I asked Dixie Suit, who was the wife of Kenneth, who was a classmate of Harold, so he was a good friend. Asked Dixie if she would like to teach the kindergarten group, and she accepted. The church was changing, so we decided to build our own school. The land where we built the school was bought by Ed Seidler and Harold. Ken and Dixie were then asked to become partners in our new venture. Lorna, Ed's wife, was asked to join the staff as we were building the school. Friendswood Children's House is well known in the community and is still operating. We sold it after 25 years. Friendswood has been a great place to live and to raise our family. We've made so many wonderful friends, and one of the best things is that they're from so many different places. So I've shortened the talk.
Okay. Janet, get that other piece.
Just the top one.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me? Our family, can you hear me? Our family and my mother moved to Friendswood in 1967 when housing finally became available. At that time, 2351 was just an old gravel road called Shoat Road.
Hold the microphone if they can't hear you.
Driving down Main Street, 518, earlier in 1965, the biggest and nicest building was the Friends Church. We knew then this would be a good place to live. There wasn't much on 518 at that time. One bank, one clinic with one doctor, and a connecting pharmacy called Brown's Drugstore. And I think I remember an old-fashioned soda fountain. Mm-hmm. There was one grocery store, as Carolyn said, and they had the best meat market anywhere. The bakers were so friendly and helpful and always greeted you with a smile when they came in. And thank you, I see Mrs. Baker here. Thank you for welcoming all the NASA invaders. The kids loved their new school, made friends right away, and even shared classes with some of the astronauts' children. We joined Hope Lutheran Church, met a lot of new people, got involved right away, and many of them are friends for life. My husband worked long hours at NASA. He traveled a lot. Sometimes he was gone 2 and 3 weeks at a time. Early on his career, he worked on the acceptance checkout equipment, and that was called ACE. Later on, his group developed the Shuttle Avionics Integrated Laboratory. That was called SAIL. He loved his job, and we were just very proud of what he was doing. So I was looking for things to do in my spare time. So I signed up for art classes at the art barn. That was part of the old Agnes Dairy Farm, and that had been there in early days. Margaret Agnes was the teacher, and while I was there, I met a lot of the local people. Margaret taught some of the astronauts' wives, excuse my voice, and she even taught Buzz Aldrin's wife. Unfortunately, I did not meet any of the wives when I was there. In fact, one of her paintings is hanging here in the library. So when you come in the front door and turn left, you'll see one of her beautiful paintings that she did on a trip to Africa. And then on the other side is a portrait of Frank Brown, the founder of Friendswood. There were no gift shops in town, not even a place to buy a little gift for birthdays. So I decided to start a gift shop. I named it House of Gifts, and had that for a while, till my mother decided she was going to do something else, because once I started it, I got her working in there, and then I did other things. So that old building is still standing today. My mother announced, well, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm buying a beauty shop. So she was, as Penny Wheeler was the beautician, and she was retiring. And so my mother was going to buy her shop. And many of the customers said, well, we're not going to stay, Penny, if you're not going to be here. But they did, and they loved my mother. And she had that shop for a long time. Our daughter was the Grand Marshal the 3rd year of the newly formed drill team called the Wranglerettes in Friendswood High School. In fact, Christy Kraft was one of the first officers the first year it formed. After college, our daughter and her husband purchased Sega Gymnastics and taught several of the astronauts' children. Our family loves Friendswood. We've been here 52 years. It's a great place to call home. Thank you.
My guest. Good job.
You want your stand?
Joyce, Joyce gonna go first? Oh. Oh, yes, you're next. Okay, we're just in the wrong seats.
No, alphabetical.
Well, before I begin, I see a lot of familiar faces, and that's what Friendswood's about. All these old friends that we've made over the years, and it's just wonderful to see y'all. I'm not very good at making speeches. I guess my last speech was when I took speech in college. So anyway, my adventure with NASA and eventually coming to Friendswood.
You're making noise pulling on me.
Sorry. And eventually coming to Friendswood began at Cape Canaveral in 1961, where after college I went down to the Cape and applied for a job. I kind of applied with Lockheed and Rockwell and some of those places. I had no idea what they did. And I took a civil service exam and went back to Mississippi. And a couple of days later, I got a call to come down and be the receptionist for Project Mercury. So I started out there, and then I became the secretary for the original 7 Mercury astronauts at the Cape, and enjoyed my time there with them and all through the Mercury program. And after the Mercury program ended, they said, well, we're building a new space center in Houston, and asked if I wanted to move to Houston and continue working. So I did. And anyway, after I got to Houston, in a couple of years, I met my husband, who was a design engineer, mechanical engineer with NASA. And of course, he worked on all the different capsules and projects and what have you, and kind of one that he was kind of really proud of, that he and 6 or 7 other engineers, I know he talked about it, was they worked on the design of the MET, which was the Modular Equipment Transporter. And that was the little rickshaw they carried on the moon to carry the tools. They worked on the design for all the specialty tools that would help them gather the lunar samples and what have you. But what he was so proud of the fact that it was designed and built in-house. That meant it was built out here at the Space Center and not a contractor involved in it. So he was really kind of tickled about that. And that's the one that Shepard put his golf club on and, swing his golf club. But he worked on a lot of the tools and things. But we lived across the street from NASA in some apartments for a year and a half. And we decided we needed to look for a home. And Friendswood was without a doubt the place to go, mainly because as a teenager, my husband grew up around Hobby Airport, and his grandfather in Pearland was foreman of Polly Ranch out here, the 400+ acres. So as a teenager, Grandpa would go up to Hobby, pick up the boys, bring them down the Shell Road 518 to the ranch, and they helped build fences out there and dig out the pond around Monkey Island, if y'all are familiar with that. And they got an old maintainer from the Pearland Airport, because Mr. Cleasing, who owned Polly Ranch, owned Pearland Airport. And the boys rode the old maintainer to put in the airstrip that's out there. So he was ready. He knew all about Friendswood, and they even stopped at All Britain's grocery and gas that, was over here, right over here on the other end of this block, and, pick up drinks or to get gas and what have you. So he was extremely familiar with Friendswood, and without a doubt, this was where we were going to live. So we started looking for a house, and we were riding kind of on that end of town, because his parents actually lived down off of Yost Road in Pearland. And we saw him putting in this subdivision out in this rice field, and it was Whitehall. And so we started looking, and I think we built about the 4th house on the particular street that we lived on. We paid almost $20,000 for that house. Do you know, I rode by it not too long ago. It was for sale, and it sold for almost $200,000. That same little house over there. So, but in later time, we did move out to Polly Ranch, and in doing so, I encouraged my husband to write a book with Joyce's help to talk about his time as a teenager in this area. So when we were newly in the area and what have you, there were, of course, everybody knows there was no place to get a hamburger or anything. And what I really remember was going up Telephone Road to a place called Mr. Charburger, and we'd get a hamburger. And back then, it really didn't seem all that far. Now, that's a long drive. But we do that occasionally, just to go get a hamburger that somebody else made. Another thing we did as young moms, for whatever reason, several groups around town formed kind of produce and vegetable groups, and we'd have a couple of girls I see Berta back there nodding. We'd kind of collect the money from the girls in the group, and a couple of us would go all the way up to Wayside to Produce Row, and get our fruit and vegetables and come back and divide it out amongst the group that we had. So, and sometimes some of us, because we particularly liked a certain vegetable, the rest of us kind of had to learn to kind of try to eat that one, too. But we had a lot of fun doing that, and it was an interesting time. Another thing that I remember was, well, we didn't have any Mother's Day outs back then. And so, as probably a lot of you did, we kind of had our own little neighborly groups, and one mom would, or maybe two, I don't remember, would help take care of the kids so that we could go, as they said, up to Gulfgate. And Alameda Mall came in 1970. I looked that up. And so it wasn't terribly long that, we were able to go to Alameda Mall, and that was a big deal. Of course, we had to kind of, go the back way, up the gravel roads, 2351 and whatever. I don't know when they got it to the freeway, but we did that. And I don't know, but the guys too, since they were all kind of going in the same direction, at least the ones kind of in our neighborhood, we carpooled a lot, and which was good because we only had one car. So that helped a whole bunch that, they could do that. Let's see what else I had. Anyway, I looked up to see when Westwood Elementary was built, and it was built in '67, which was the year we actually bought our home, and our kids were tiny. Well, we only had one at the time, but a couple of years later, in 1970, one day we were out riding around, and we rode, I guess, through Heritage Gardens to Falling Leaf. That's the one that goes out by the high school, isn't it? Yeah. I thought about that, and I thought, am I saying the right one? Anyway, we rode up to Sunset, and I don't remember what Sunset looked like then, if it was just kind of a shell road across there or what, but all was in front of us was this huge, massive field and a giant building way out there. And we thought, what in the world is that big building? And it was our new high school that was going in, It's kind of a funny feeling seeing that thing way out there, but, and look, you can't even see it anymore, but, let's see, I was trying to think what else we kind of, one thing we did was, when we began to get more and more kids in the area and everybody started forming our little sports groups, the football and the basketball and the baseball and the soccer. And so I had the Friendswood Phillies, which were the little drill team that went with the Friendswood Colts, the little football. And I taught and coached those for 5 years and took them to competitions and what have you. It was 5 to 12-year-olds. And my husband coached my son, who's here tonight, baseball teams and soccer teams. And, back then our fields were horrible. They were muddy or they were dusty and whatever have you. And I really remember Joe playing soccer in the field between Westwood and the Red Top. And it was so cold. I don't know how the kids kept their act together, but they were just freezing out in the mud. And afterwards, we'd go up to the Red Top and get food to eat. So that, and I don't know when Red Top was built, but it's still here and going. So anyway, after I quit work at NASA shortly after about time we moved to Friendswood, and I started catering weddings. And back then, the weddings were just cake and punch, because we only had churches to have them in. There weren't any community centers anywhere, and the money they spend on weddings nowadays is quite something. But that's what I did, and my husband was able to stay at home and take care of the kids. So sometimes he helped too. But another thing that I've done is I've taught the 3 or 4-year-olds at the Methodist Church for 50 years. And I've enjoyed being around the small kids, and I've seen them grow up, and their kids I'm teaching now. So it's really neat. I've been a very active member of our garden club here, and I don't know if y'all realize, but our garden club is like 53 years old now, and we're very active in the community, and I have a lot of fun, you know, with the people there. So, and really just, I think, kind of in my summary, and I'm so glad Joycina is here tonight, but I just want to say, of course, I see so many people that have lived here, but I like to tell my new friends that come into town that they have to buy Joyce's book, A Settlement of Friendly Folks, because everyone needs to know about this community and what our history is here. It's a wonderful place to live, and we don't like the creeks when they flood, but they keep us from growing any bigger. So we're a wonderful little town.
Okay, I'm Joyce Pavelka, and I guarantee you mine's going to be short. Ed worked for NASA. He was an aerospace engineer. He worked in the trench, which was the front row of the control center, right in front of the big screens. He grew up in Houston, went to UT. We dated in high school. I'm a cosmetologist, so I'm not a big space scientist or anything like that. And let's see, I spend a lot of my time on donations and volunteering. I've spent almost 23 years at Clear Lake Hospital. Now it's HCA Houston Healthcare Center. I worked with the school, the club, the school's activity, Square Dance Club. I was in a ukulele band for 11 years. And we have a quilt guild down here at the Friends Church. We just donated 21 quilts to Project Linus, which gives quilts and receiving blankets to infants to 18-year-olds. We've given them to the police department, the pregnancy center, the EMS, and to a couple of rest homes. I grew up in Bartlett, Texas, which was a very small town, much smaller than Friendswood when we moved here. But Ed really wanted to come to NASA, and he took the lowest paying job that was offered back then, but that's what he wanted to do. And I was pregnant with the second child, and Bruce was ready for kindergarten, and back then we had to pay for kindergarten. And homes were like $10 a square foot. Now I Googled it, and it says it's 127, but I have a feeling some of them are a lot higher than that. And both of our children graduated from Friendswood High School. They married Friendswood graduates. We have 5 grandchildren, and 4 out of them graduated from Friendswood. One of them was an Army brat, so he graduated in Germany. And we came straight to NASA from college. And that's what he wanted, and I grew up in a small town, so this worked out quite well for him. He was in the Houston area, and it was a small town. Of course, as they said, we've seen a lot of changes in Friendswood. I remember the Lemon Drop little drive-in. I don't know if anybody remembers it.
Oh, yes.
And and there was also, let's see, Scotty's Fried Chicken. And then there was a little coffee shop next door to Janet's gift shop. So that was the only 3 places to eat here, and I don't remember what years they were, but we did eventually get Minimax grocery store, and then there was Perry's Variety Store next door to Minimax, and and I filled in a few times at your mother's beauty shop. And I saw in the Friendswood Museum that there was not a brick home in Friendswood until the NASA area came. So, anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
I'm Jean Strouhal, and I was married. I'm not used to it. I was married to George Strouhal, and he passed away in July of 2000. And the reason we are in this area, we moved from Fort Worth, where he was an engineer at General Dynamics and designing airplanes. And he decided to come to NASA and accepted a job as an engineer in the Structures and Mechanics Division's Thermal Technology section to work toward putting a man on the moon. And on arriving in Houston area, it came as a great surprise that there were no houses to be rented in 1962. But we had a friend who was determined she was going to find us a house, and that was Donna Erb. I see Brian sitting over there. He hired George when he came to NASA. And Donna was going to find us a house in South Houston or Pasadena. But all the homes had been rented by the previous NASA workers. And so we ended up finding a house in Bel Air. And, well, his office was out off the Gulf Freeway, so that wasn't like he was having to drive to where the Space Center is now. But we lived in Bel Air and looked around for a place that we thought would be where we'd like to live, and we came upon Friendswood. And since George had grown up in Alvin and gone to Alvin High School, when he referred to Friendswood, he always said, as a kid, when you came to Friendswood, you were lost. But we were glad that we found the little community of Friendswood, because it was a place we wanted to build our home, and we found a place in Imperial Estates and built our home there. And let's see, like someone else said, traveling down 2351 or Choate Road, you were on a shell road, and I know Carolyn mentioned that the street in front of our houses in Imperial Estates was shell. And we were very happy when that finally became paved, so we didn't have to put up with the dust. Also, Highway 518 was a 2-lane road. I think it may have been paved, but it was a 2-lane road, and no esplanades on
Schultz Road or 518, just little 2-lane roads. Cows grazing on the acreage behind our house was a daily scene, and we didn't have fences, so they sometimes were in our yards. But visiting the bookmobile that came from the Rosenberg Library in Galveston, parked in the Baker's grocery parking lot, was a fun activity for us. It came twice a month. And then from the bookmobile, we were happy when Friendswood had got the new library, which was located in Friendswood, now the Friendswood Activity Center. And now how happy we are to have this nice facility. I'm happy to have been a charter member of the Friendswood United Methodist Church. We started meeting in families' homes, and then we met in the round building of the junior high before we moved to our facility now on 2351. I retired after teaching kindergarten for 15 and first grade for 15 years at Klein Primary School. And I now reside at the same address where I've lived for 56 years. And I've only had to go through one flood, and that was Harvey. I'm Betty Windler.
Use the microphone.
Oh, shucks. I'm Betty Windler still. We were living in Hampton, Virginia, and Milton was working at Langley for the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA. And then President Johnson decided to build the Space Center in Houston, Texas. Being a native Texan, it sounded like a great plan to me. We moved to Houston in 1962 and lived there 2 years while the Space Center was being built. We chose Friendswood because it was small and a good place to raise our children. The population was about 2,000. There was one stoplight, blacktop roads, and Baker's Food Market. You saw as many horses as cars on the road. The town grew fast because of NASA people moving here. Right away, we got active in the Baptist church, both Milton and I teaching Sunday school. I taught young married women and children for most of those years. When I turned 80, my memory retired, and so did I. Oh dear, that's not right. Our 3 children, Peter, Marion, and Carrie, went through the school system here. The moms were active in PTA and helping with a yearly carnival, which Evelyn Newman headed up. There were no fences in our neighborhood, except for one we called Fort Hodge. And our children were free to play with the other children on the block. But they were supposed to be within hearing distance of my cowbell and get home when they heard it. Early on, Milton ran for city council and got elected. I was his campaign manager and painted signs out on the driveway. I very much enjoyed playing on a city women's softball team. I also coached a girls' softball team. It took
some patience. My outfielder was picking wildflowers. In spite of that, she is still a treasured friend today. Right, Jackie? One year our team was the Blue Streaks, and another year the Purple People Eaters. It was great fun. I served as a Friendswood emergency medical technician for about 12 years. Duty was day and our night shifts. Ona Mae Worden and Marge Lowe also served at the same time. Another thing I enjoyed for many years was singing hymns every Tuesday morning at the rest home. Letha Camp played the piano and Carol Boone helped sing and turn pages. When Carol Boone had to quit, she was replaced by Roseanne Hawkins, that's you, and whose husband, Brian, worked at NASA. The rest home singing ended with a Harvey storm. At first, Milton was in landing and recovery. The shots were usually delayed. I don't know why I said usually, they were always delayed. And he was on some distant island or North Africa or some other remote place waiting. I was pretty busy with the needs of 3 children, upkeep of a house and a car. Later, as an Apollo flight director, he, like the others, especially on 11 and 13, spent most of his days and nights at the Space Center. Apollo 13 was a very stressful time. We have lived here 55 years. 4 of our present neighbors are the original homeowners and came about the same time we did. We have raised our children together and helped each other through some tough times. I don't remember a cross word between us, ever. We have always felt blessed to live here, and we have great memories.
Wow, how can I beat all that, right? I'm Marilyn Lunney. I don't even know where to start. My husband and I met at Lewis Labs where I was the nurse. He was one of the engineers. His boss, George Lowe, asked him to go to Langley for the Space Task Group. Next thing I know, we're on a plane coming here. And let me tell you, that plane door opened. I tried to get back on the plane. It wouldn't let me on. I'm carrying our daughter. We had my old convertible. It was a pretty good convertible, which we thought would be wonderful down here. You couldn't put the top down. You would have died. Our friends at Tyndall's had rented a house, Deer Park or somewhere, so we stayed there for a while till we found an apartment. I had to keep our redheaded daughter in a bath all day because she broke out in heat rash. She looked like a big red pimple. And then we found our lot in Imperial Estates and near Tyndall's and our other Virginia friends. Glenn's office was on Stallmeyer's building on the Gulf Freeway. It was there a year and a half later. We stood and watched as a very young, attractive president and his young wife and the Conleys drove by the day before he was shot and killed in Dallas. It put a whole new light on everything for us, for our family, for the space program, which we wanted to see persist and grow strong in his honor, because he was the one who came forward and said, let's do it. Friendswood was a wonderful place. They welcomed us. I had no car, so I had to walk wherever I went with these kids, except when Dad went out of town. Then I got to get the car. But what that meant is taking him to the airport and then coming back the old Choate Road. How many remember the old Choate Road? Dark. You had to be so careful because the cows or the deer or the horses would be out on there, God knows what else. And so you were very, very careful. But I had a car. Living out 2351 as I was, I found it rather limiting. I couldn't go very far. And one day I was standing in the kitchen looking out and I heard this horrible loud crash and looked out my back window, and in the field behind me was a lady, a car. She'd been thrown clear of the car, but I knew she was not going to survive. The old nurse ran out, tried to do something. Other people came. Mitch Wright, of course, came. But the next week I gathered a petition to get together to lower the speed limit on 2351. Took it to Mitch. Mitch got it passed, and my name then became Marilyn Mudd. Nobody would like me anymore. There were some churches here, and a library, a food market, area news media was on Joyce's bulletin from the church, from the store. Groceries available, Burtzlaff, town news. And after a very hot Sunday drive down to Dickinson to go to Catholic Mass, I got the nerve up to ask her if I could put an ad in the Baker's Bulletin to start a church. And from that, I got 15 phone calls. So I called the diocese, and in their wisdom, they said, when you get the list together, you have the men come down and talk to us. And they did, probably more was one of them. And from thence, we still have Mary Queen. The Friendswood people were just, I can't say enough for them. They were kind, welcoming. There's just, Mr. Bales at his nursery was our favorite. We'd go there, look at plants with a few bucks we had to spend on trying to decorate our house. And he'd be saying to Glenn, well, take this one and try it. I just got it in. And Mrs. Bales was saying, Lubert, we can't give away everything. And then she'd laugh. And then others would come up to me and say, what is your husband doing up there in space? My cows are acting up and I don't like it. Or Mrs. Stevenson, who the park is named after, a fine educator, would call me up one day and said, I hear you're forming a League of Women Voters. And I said, yes, we are. She said, well, I want to join that. And I said, well, fine, we'll see you at City Hall. She said, oh, no, I can't drive on the city streets anymore. They're too busy. She should see it now. Jane Tyndall was one of my best friends and one of the few that would put my 4 kids in with her 4 kids, and we'd go to the market or do something. One day we came back and got a flat tire right in front of the pool in Imperial Estates by Carolyn's house. And we're sitting there looking at this tire, and this man come by some tractor in his overalls, all worked and sweaty. Okay, ladies, I'll change your tire. So he changed the tire, and we tried to pay him. He wandered off into the night. I later found out it was the developer, Leon Brown. He never said thank you. He never said anything to us. And it was just the way people were. They would come forth, they'd help, they'd offer. And I don't know, I can't speak highly enough. We later learned that he had done a lot of that sort of stuff. And when we built our house behind Mary Queen in the woods, we came back to the pasture one day and found that our horse had been run by some kid on a motor scooter and broken his leg. The vet came and said there was nothing we could do. He put him to sleep, and I didn't even say anything or do anything. Leon showed up with his backhoe to bury his Jeep, give him a proper burial. But that's the kind of people we found here in Friendswood, and we became that kind of people. We all wanted to do something for other people. At least that's the way I felt. We got PTA, PTO going at the high school. We started a program that I was particularly pleased with. We had a lot of workmen that spoke foreign languages in the neighborhoods then, and the kids were scared. The guys were just being friendly, buenos dias, whatever. We made up signs of a hand. Marilyn Van Bockel did that. It was called the Helping Hand, and that could be put in windows so that when the kids got coming home, if they got a little nervous, they could run up to that door and talk to Mrs. Jones or Mr. Smith or whomever. And that worked good. So the Helping Hand was one of the things I felt good about it. I helped with coaching the kids. Baseball scouts, it didn't seem I had a husband around much. He found airplanes to fly on a lot. I guess I told you about the airplane. Yeah, that's not fun either. Anyways, our girl team almost won. I think Marion might have been on that team one year. And we were winning. And the umpire had to leave, so there was only one man left in the stadium. Unfortunately, he had to be there. I'm not looking at anybody over there. And the girl got up and hit a great hit and ran around the bases, and we were all jumping up and down. He said, she threw her bat. She's out. Oh, that's the Honorable Dr. Lunney over there. I was elected to the school board, and after my election, my second term, I finally got elected president, which was, a big deal in Friendswood. But then Mr. Lunney got his orders to go to Washington for a year. And we did not like the idea of being separated. So I packed the kids up, and for that one semester, before Jenny's senior year, we went up and stayed in Washington. We had a grand time. We went up to the fields where they were having all kinds of sports activities. There was a good place for the boys to fish. Brian probably doesn't remember this. Behind Teddy Kennedy's house, he would let us go down there and fish. We just had a great time and came back in time for the kids to get involved back in the year at the school. She had stayed with my friend Blanche Weber. I don't know how many of you know her for a few weeks, so she was a wonderful person. Over those years, I'd got a real estate broker's license, worked in real estate for a builder, started my own company, which I'd registered with the state and had an office in Nassau Bay. One time a company from New York wanted to,
Yeah, good.
thank you. New York wanted to use the name Neighborhood Realty, so my lawyer got together with him. He bought the name from us, and we had something added to our college fund. I had been working for Alta Carbone on the side. I had gotten my appraiser certificates, and so she put me on the appraisal review board for Galveston County, and learned about a lot of people down there, got involved with some other things, and just learned a whole new area. The kids were going off to college and all that sort of thing. One night I got a call from City Councilman Ed Zeidler, whose wife Lorna, I consider an amazing room, your partner in the school. She thought to tell me that they're getting a new Galveston County court, and he thought it'd be great if I ran for the position. It's a justice of the peace court. I told him I didn't want to marry anyone, and while I thought about it, my candidacy was filed by acclamation, and I was on the ballot. Well, you don't put a woman on the ballot with 5 men and know they're going to just walk away with her behind themselves. They're going to fight it out, and I did. And anyways, out of all that stuff, I was on the ballot. Friends pitched in. Marie Marlowe was my campaign chairman. And somehow I won. My husband tells the story about one of the candidates who, in order to dismiss my potential as anything possible as a court, that we had a candidates night for the League of Women Voters, and so he was there telling them that I shouldn't be voted for because, after all, I was just a housewife. He lost in the primary. Would you believe that? And I was elected the first woman judge in Galveston County, which I did not know at the time. I found out later when I ran into the lady judge down there now, that's family court, and she was saying, I thought I was the first woman judge. She says, but I found out you were there. I said, I didn't even know that. Nobody ever tells you that. But I will tell you something about Judge Roy Holbrook. He was, sometimes people consider him austere, standoffish, but I went and talked to him while I was a candidate and some of the other people down there and got to know them. And when I was elected and before, I said, I don't think I'll ever know how to do all this. How will I ever find any do it? And he says, you just have to know where to find it. And I'll be here for you, and we will be as well. And that worked out okay. But then that backpack guy I carried with me, he had other plans. So after about 3 years, I got out of the different law libraries I spent in my life part-time and all the rest. He said, we have an offer from Rockwell to go out to California. We had 4 kids to go to college. We had 4 kids who wanted to go to advanced college. Our daughter's a veterinarian, our son's a lawyer, mine's an engineer, all that sort of thing. And we had to make it what was right for them. That's why we brought them here. And so I resigned and we moved to California. We're out there about 3 years, came back. Glenn ran the Rockwell company down here. I thought we were moving back to Friendswood. I had stayed there to stay with the house and get things packed up, and I thought he was going to fix it up. We're going to go find a place in Friendswood. The next thing I know, We have a lot on the golf course over in the Bay Oaks, across the freeway. He was almost, he'd been married almost 60 years. As you can see, it wasn't all peace and quiet. They're good people. They really are over there, and we've had a good time. But he was never going to drive through Webster to work again. Did any of your husbands ever complain about driving through Webster? Everybody has their thing, I guess. Anyways, they're good people. We still belong to Mary Queen. Our daughter lives here in Friendswood, and she's still a horse lover, yes. And I know it's a different place here now, but the quality of life, the folks here are extraordinary, and I am so proud to join you tonight. When I said to Harold, let me know if there's anything I can do, here I am. I thought, what'll I do? And I called the people I knew who did the things. And here they are to join us and talk with you tonight. So I hope you've enjoyed it. We've all been a little bit nervous about it, as you can tell. But thank you, God bless, and it's wonderful to be here with you.
We've covered it out. Nobody has questions, do they?
Yes, we're done. Thank you.
Leda has a question.
Yes?
Which one of you was the first one to come to Friendswood by the years in your life?
We were here in '62.
To Friendswood.
Yeah, the summer of '62.
We came in '65.
Did anybody come
67.
before Marilyn, or was she the first?
There were a lot of people here.
Well, I meant of the panel.
To Friendswood?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
No, our friends at Tyndall's that moved here, Crafts, all of those people we knew. We moved in and found a lot on Royal Court Circle. 6 of the 8 homes that were built in there were NASA-related people. So to say that we came in droves, it almost seems that way. But everybody was so welcoming to us. And I don't know how to explain that to you. It's just the spirit of Friendswood. Maybe you've all
I
felt
have one little thing I'll tell about. I don't get along with horses, and they don't like me either. And I was driving my car down one of the side roads here in town, and a horse tried to kick my car. I wasn't doing anything to that horse. He moved. I don't know. I can tell you.
I tried to put on the table with his mouth. I said the horse was from Alvin.
right. I don't know where this is.
Anybody else have any questions for the ladies? All right. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, ladies, for spending the evening with us and sharing your life. It was fun. Thank you so much.